Food noise isn't a diagnosis yet, but it's finally become part of our cultural conversation because the biology behind it is very real, and it explains why modern food makes us feel out of control. Food noise wasn't an accident, it was engineered. They tested and measured and optimized food. And once you understand that, you'll understand why I finally created this channel. Have you ever eaten a full meal and your brain still says, "What's next? Chocolate would be good. Maybe just a little something." Sometimes it's after a really big meal, like you go out for Chinese food and you're completely full, and an hour later you're thinking about ice cream. And why do you think that restaurants serve bread before your meal? Well, we'll come back to that. Food noise is the continuous thoughts about food, when you're going to get to eat next, what you want to eat, that craving for something sweet or maybe salty, always a carbohydrate. I really don't see clients craving beef jerky or Brussels sprouts. And today I want to explain step by step, simply and as honestly as I can, where food noise comes from and how processed foods made it worse, and why medications like GLP-1s work, regardless of your opinion about them. Because this problem was never about willpower, it was about signals. Let's start with the basics. You have a hunger signal. It's your body saying, "I need fuel." Food noise is your brain saying, "I want food. What is there to eat?" And you may find yourself rummaging through the pantry even though you just ate. I remember when I first stumbled upon a food blog, All Day I Dream About Food. And I thought, wow, this gal, she must live in my head. But it became apparent to me when I began health coaching in 2008 that many women struggled with this food noise. And over time, witnessing them go through my elimination protocol, which is how I broke through processed food and sugar addiction, I knew that this wasn't random. It wasn't until years later that I met Dr. Joan Ifland, who wrote the textbook on processed food addiction, and talked with Bitten Janssen from Bitten's Addiction. And I was able to combine the research with my anecdotal evidence on processed food addiction. It took me a bit longer to understand the signaling malfunctions of leptin and ghrelin, but I digress. Here's an easy test. If you're hungry, an apple sounds good. If you have food noise, only cookies will do. See, food noise doesn't live in your stomach. It lives in your brain. And your brain has one main job: to keep you alive. To do that, it uses these signals. Think of your brain like a control room with walkie-talkies. There's a superhighway between our gut and our brain, and they communicate via these signals. When food works the way it's supposed to, hunger signals turn on and then off when we eat. Fullness signals turn off and then on when we're full, and the brain rests because this is an automatic process. But these signals get mixed up and very much hijacked by processed food, which brings me back to the bread basket. Most restaurant bread is made from refined wheat flour, and that flour is mostly starch, missing the bran and the germ, so it's low in fiber, easy to chew, quick to digest, and your body treats it like sugar. When you eat bread first, that starch breaks down quickly into glucose. Blood sugar rises rapidly, and your body responds by releasing insulin to move that sugar into cells. Happening before you've eaten protein, fat, or fiber, and insulin is just doing its job, sometimes too well. So now blood sugar drops and the brain senses, oh no, energy is falling, and it triggers hunger signals, not because you need food, but because your blood sugar is swinging. See, I give you this example because here's where food noise begins. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, rises again. Dopamine is already activated from the bread, and our satiety hormones, GLP-1 and leptin, haven't kicked in yet. Why? Because the bread digests too fast. It doesn't stretch the stomach much, and it doesn't trigger a strong fullness signal. So the result is that you feel like snackier and not satisfied. Have you ever felt not satisfied even after eating? Now, when your main meal arrives, your hunger is louder, the portions actually look smaller, and your cravings are stronger. This is why people will say, I don't know why, but I'm starving, even though they already ate the bread. The bread feels filling, but it isn't. Bread creates this temporary fullness, but it also creates brain excitement with dopamine. Furthermore, the Glutamates are excitatory messengers in the brain, and when food like bread trigger those pathways, they can increase stimulation and drive eating, even when the body doesn't need any fuel. This part is important because there's something called the bliss point, and the bliss point was studied by food scientists and psychophysicists, including Howard Moskowitz, and used by major food companies. He specialized in sensory optimization. His claim was that people don't know what they want until you test it. Or my interpretation of that is you don't know what you want until they convince you or hijack the signals in your brain. This is called applied behavioral science. The bliss point is the perfect combination of sugar, salt, fat, texture, and flavor that makes the food just feel amazing but not filling. Bliss point foods taste incredible and they light up our brain, but really don't make us feel full. Back to that, are you full but not satisfied? Because the food that satisfies you quickly would actually be a failed product. Remember, we live in a world of consumerism. A successful product is one that keeps you eating. This was not accidental. It was tested, adjusted, and optimized. Now let's talk about cravings. Your brain uses a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine tells us, do that again. See, ultra-processed foods spike dopamine fast without giving real nourishment, without the fiber, minerals, or protein to finish the job. So when your brain gets reward without resolution, it creates this wanting without satisfaction, eating without fullness. Like, I just ate, but why do I still want more? Brain scans show that ultra-processed foods activate the same reward areas as addictive substances. I've talked about this in other videos. Over time, the brain adapts, and this is called tolerance. You need more food, more flavor, more stimulation, not because you're weak, but because your brain has adjusted to the environment. Your body uses messengers called hormones to talk to the brain. Let's meet the big ones. Ghrelin tells us when we're hungry. It goes up before meals and it goes down after eating enough. Whole foods with protein and fiber turn ghrelin down. Ultra-processed foods don't, especially low-protein foods, low-fiber foods, liquid calories. Did you see that video I did on drinking our sugar? Well, the result is hunger comes back fast. Then there's leptin, the signal that we're full. Leptin tells the brain, we have enough stored energy now. But with long-term ultra-processed food intake, leptin is still there, but the brain stops listening. This is called leptin resistance. This is well documented in metabolic disease. The result, the fullness signals are ignored. This is not a willpower failure, it's a communication failure. GLP-1 is a hormone released in your gut when you eat real food. It does 4 important things: slows digestion, increases fullness, helps insulin work better, and it tells the brain we're fed. You see, ultra-processed foods just digest too quickly. They move through the gut too fast, they don't stretch the gut, and they don't trigger GLP-1 properly. Over time, the body stops relying on the signal, just like in insulin resistance, which you've probably heard of. So we have insulin resistance, leptin resistance, and dopamine tolerance. GLP-1 medications replace a signal that modern food stopped triggering well. That's why people say the food noise stopped, because a missing messenger was restored. But here's what I want you to take away from this. Medication may help restore proper signaling, but changing the food removes the cause of that poor signaling. If ultra-processed foods stay in the diet, the system never fully heals. That's why even with medication, the offenders still matter. Food companies absolutely knew that fiber makes people eat less and protein increases fullness. Chewing and texture slow the intake of food. Faster digestion means more eating, and better taste means more sales. And if you saw my video on the processing of wheat, now do you realize why they removed the bran and the germ? They optimized speed, convenience, and shelf life. They designed or engineered craveability. And now we have a host of modern metabolic diseases. It was never about the calories. That was kind of like, look over here so you don't see what we're doing over here. Hijacking our brain by affecting our signaling, the ghrelin, leptin, GLP-1, dopamine, and insulin hormones, well, that was a bit devious. Here's my question to you. Would you attempt to manipulate someone to sell your product? I would say most of us with a conscience would say no. But do corporations have a conscience? If food noise is solved by medication, the problem was never moral. This was never a willpower issue. And that's what I discovered personally and with my clients. Long before I had the research to back this up, I was able to witness that removing ultra-processed foods was the first step to quieting food noise. So first, I'd like to say, please don't judge people who struggle with food or those who may decide to take a GLP-1. Second, if you feel like I'm speaking to you and you suffer from food noise, processed food, or sugar addiction, or just want to feel better, you can book a consultation with me. I teach families how to replace the processed food with real food. Whole foods actually takes time to be prepared, preparing our body for digestion. They take more time to chew, they digest more slowly, and they trigger fullness, which truly does end food noise. And when signals work, the brain can rest. This is the moment where people usually ask me the same question. Okay, I don't trust food anymore. What can we eat? And I hear you, because once you see how the food has been engineered, it can be overwhelming, even paralyzing. This is why I think many people default to saying everything in moderation or a little bit won't hurt. I think they're just overwhelmed or paralyzed. That's actually the reason I changed how I coach people. I realized something important. People don't need more rules, they need skills. They need to see food made from real ingredients. It helped in my workshops to bring food and have people taste it, touch it, cook it, and realize, oh, this is real food and this is satisfying. And that's why I started offering cooking classes. Because when you know how to cook, food stops being mysterious and it stops controlling you. Freedom truly does begin and end in our kitchen. My goal is to set more people free, so please consider sharing this video with someone you know, because people don't need more shame. They need better explanations. Food noise is not a weakness. It's a biological response to processed food. And freedom begins when we fix the signals. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.